Hello, and welcome to Artpop Talk. I'm Gianna.
And I'm Bianca. They think they can just kick me out of the band in this episode, don't they? Back by popular demand, this week we have another episode of Josh Thoughts. I'm so excited to use our Josh Thoughts audio this week, I cannot tell you. Josh and Gianna discuss the themes and musicality behind Dischordia's upcoming album, Triptych. Gianna then shares a lillltle landscape theory tied to historic narratives rooted in spirituality, religion, and nature when creating the cover art Hello for the band.
Well, you're not hardcore unless you live hardcore, Bianca. And with that, let's Artpop Talk.
No, you're not hardcore
Unless you live hardcore.
But the legend of the rent
was way hardcore.
was way hardcore.
And then a thin layer of fog.
Oh, I'm gonna watch that now. I love that movie. What a fantastic movie that has really, I think, stood the test of time.
Oh, iconic movie. Love it. And the actress who played the cello, you got a bass girl, she comes up on my TikTok now all the time.
Yes. Oh, I forgot what her name is.
I don't know. She's really cute, though. I like her a lot. She's got good vibes.
Yeah.
But speaking of good vibes, I mean, Josh Thoughts.
I'm so excited for another Josh Thoughts. So if you're new to the podcast, hello, new listeners. I love our stats going up every week. I just need to say I'm super excited about it. If you are new to APT, Josh Turner is our brother-in-law. He is also the lead vocalist in the band Dischordia, and he just has a lot of lovely, funny, hilarious opinions about art and music, and he's really taught us a lot about the connections between the visual and the audio over the course of the past year. I mean, he always does. But if you want to go and check out our previous episodes, we have a Josh Thoughts episode on Chromatica, and then we also have Josh Thoughts featured in the episode What is in Your Flux Kit, and we can link those for you as well, so you can get a little more Josh in your week.
Yeah. I make jokes about it a lot, but we did miss you for Josh Thoughts because it would have been perfect with the three of us for our Triptych theme for the day. But you were in Detroit and you went to some art museums. So before we get into our segment for today, I wanted to talk about that.
Yes. So I was in Detroit over the past week for a wedding. It was a Chaldean Italian wedding, and it was maybe the most fun wedding I've ever been to. It was just awesome. So congratulations to the happy couple. I was invited as a Andrews plus one, so I got to tag along. But I was just not only so impressed with the city of Detroit, it's just filled with art and murals. And, Andrew and I were kind of talking about this. It made us really sad that Detroit has this perception from the rest of kind of, white America, where it's like, it's not a safe city. It's like, doesn't have a lot of tourist opportunities. But I just need to say we had so much fun. And first of all, it was also very lovely going back to a type of Midwestern city. I just needed to say that I felt very comfortable there. Everyone was just so friendly. It was honestly wild. Like after spending the year on the East Coast, like returning to like this Milwaukee, Chicago vibes, I was like, wait, people are just talking to me on the street? Like, that's nice. Hello, strangers. And we got a free beer from a brew pub called Hopcats. It was very nice. We talked to, I don't know if he was the owner or manager, but he was very nice, very fun to talk to, very fun people all around. But Andrew and I went to the Detroit Institute of the Arts, and Gianna, I was just floored by the collection. Andrew and I went to breakfast that morning, and he was like, do you know like any of the pieces that we're going to see today? And I was like, no, I didn't really like look it up. I didn't look at their website. I just like, let's just go, of course. The thing to do is go to the art museum when you're in a new place. Gianna, I was crying in the middle of the museum on multiple stops. I feel like it was really nice to go back to a museum space where I felt, I don't know, just I got that kind of returning feeling of like why I love art in the first place. You know what I mean? I feel like when we're here on the podcast, we like to hate on art history and museums sometimes because it sucks a lot of the time. And there are a lot of problems with it, and we get frustrated by it. And it just felt good to kind of go back and stand in front of a piece of art that I really wasn't expecting to be there, and just feel the power of the artwork itself. And kind of, I was able to kind of take a moment and disassociate those problems that art institutions have that you and I are constantly kind of wrestling with. So turning every corner was so cool. I'm, pulling Andrew along like, oh my God, look at this, look at this, look at this. And my first big moment was Bronzino's Eleanor of Toledo. And I have dreams about this dress that, she's wearing. And I truly feel like that piece, I need to do some more research onto how it got into the Detroit Museum. But I truly had no idea where that piece was. I would have thought it was somewhere in Italy. It's like that work that's on that iconic level. I love Bronzino in the first place, and that dress, that work is just, it's just one of those iconic art historical pieces. And I know that's a problem in itself with the canon where you associate works with, value, but it was so beautiful. I just can't describe, like, you talk about that work of art in class all the time, but seeing it in person was unbelievable. I mean, I spent a good 20 or 30 minutes standing in front of it, just looking at her dress. I could not stop looking at her dress, Gianna. It was stunning, and it looks so pristine. Like, it's not one of those works that really looks crackled and old. Like, it just looked so perfect. It was like it was brand new, and it was just insane. We also saw Fuseli's The Nightmare. Mm-hmm. I was not expecting that, and I was quizzing Andrew. I was like, do you know what this painting is in? And I just remember, like, if you know Twilight, when she's Googling vampires, The Nightmare comes up, and I always thought that was just kind of funny because it's not really about, vampires, but something that preys on women, I guess. And the big highlight, I have to say, we turn down this corridor, and honestly, Gianna, I felt like I was back at the Louvre. It had the same color, that like deep red color that the Romantic Hall, where like the Delacroix and Ancres are in the Louvre, it just had that like deep red color. It's like this very grand, large hall, and the paintings are massive. And I'm looking over here on this one side, and I see this like beautiful Caravaggio. I'm looking at the card players. I'm looking at all these like amazing works. And then I'm looking at this Caravaggio, and then I just happen to like turn my head and I look on the opposite side of the wall. And I was literally Andrew and I were walking through the museum. We saw a work of Judith beheading Holofernes, and I can't remember what the artist was, but I was like, oh, I've never seen this rendition. I was telling him how my undergraduate thesis was on the story of Judith and Holofernes. Right. Ooh, maybe that's an episode we should do, actually.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
We haven't done that yet. And I'm telling him about, everyone's always, going on about Artemisia's, and she's great, but my thesis was on Lavinia Fontana's.
Iconic.
And then in this hall and I'm telling him about the comparison, between Caravaggio's Judith and Artemisia's Judith. And then I'm looking over here at this Caravaggio to my left, and then I just happen to turn, and I see one of Artemisia's Judith and Holofernes. Not the one that's the usual kind of comparison with the Caravaggio, but the one that's actually after the beheading, where Judith and her maids are kind of sneaking out of where they've just beheaded.
They have that?
Gianna, they have that, and I haven't had that feeling in an art museum in so long. Aww. Where I saw it, and it was huge. It was huge, and it was gorgeous. And Andrew and I mean, I cannot make this up. We were just talking about my undergraduate thesis, and I was telling him about Artemisia, and like, I was speechless. And I was just, thank God for the mask. Honestly, like, I am not ready to get rid of the mask because I cannot keep my fucking shit together. And we're just standing there, and Andrew sees me cry a lot, but like, we're in public. I'm just like, like crying in front of this piece, like trying like my chin was quivering, like you couldn't see it on the mask, thank God, but I was just trying to keep it together. And I couldn't help it. It was so beautiful. And I couldn't also believe that all of these works were in the Detroit Institute of Art. I mean, it was not that they shouldn't have an amazing art collection. I didn't know how incredible this museum was. I mean, it was just amazing. And the Judith was just like one of, I don't know. I mean, everybody kind of has one of those paintings that just like, you feel something, you feel what the power of art actually does for you. And to be in the presence of Artemisia's work and just the lineage, the precedent that she sets for us, for art history, being this incredible painter, but also, a woman painting in her time who's like just surpassed so many of her male contemporaries. And it was just like, I don't know. It was just, it was amazing. Well, it was so great.
And if you haven't experienced that before, stumbling upon an artwork that you didn't know was at a certain place, it's a different feeling to where you go to an art museum because you specifically want to see this piece versus just going and seeing what happens. And then when something like that so exciting happens, it really is such a exciting and also kind of like awe-inspiring experience. And I hope that one day everyone has those moments of finding something, even something new, or an artist you didn't know, or a work of art that you just fall in love with, and be able to experience it in the moment. It is such a feeling. And so, one, you're so freaking cute. You're adorable. I almost wish we were recording this because your like grin is like giving me cute aggression vibes. But that is really fantastic.
Yeah. I also wanted to say that on top of just the fucking incredible collection they had, I can't get over it. They also had a really fantastic contemporary space. We got to see some Kehinde Wiley, some Titus Kaffir. And then I also wanted to point out that, Andrew and I also went to the Detroit History Museum, and that was really fantastic too. But just learning about the Black community in Detroit, and I noticed that in the art museum, they had all of these incredible pieces by, quote unquote master works, or, the old masters or whatever. But a lot of their collection is by artists of this kind of like canonical caliber, but they feature people of color. So that was like also just a really fantastic and interesting element, where if you think about, something at the Met or these like very white art
they're not going to
like
deter from what we think of when we think of the canon.
Right. And so what the Detroit Museum did was kind of take these masterwork pieces of art and then highlighted the people of color within these paintings. And that was just like another really fantastic element that was, it was so prevalent. And it's, unfortunately, when you study the canon, you're not getting people of color in those old masterworks, and you're not talking about those pieces. But the Detroit Institute of Art made it a point and let that spearhead and guide how you view the rest of the, their collection. So that was just, I also just wanted to say that it was it was so cool. It was just so cool.
I think also why we feel so passionately about places like that do make an effort to restructure and reshape the ways in which we should learn about things is because if we want others to follow suit or other academic environments to follow suit, that's going to start at these, powerhouses in museum institution type settings. So
and it clearly showed how a museum of that caliber can serve its community.
Right.
Like,
it can be done.
Yeah, sure enough. If you fucking work hard at it and you make a point to include people who look like the people who are visiting your museum, you know what? You create an inclusive space. Imagine that, Gianna. Can you imagine? It was just...
What have we been talking about on this podcast for this past year? Beats me.
It simply cannot be done. There are no women. There are no LGBTQ stories. There are no stories of people of color in the canon. Well,
Nah.
Look at this.
Nah.
Look at this whole collection of masterworks that are up. And also, I mean, I couldn't help but think about it when we were in there. The value of that collection just has to be astronomical. I mean, I was just like, I couldn't help it, but I was also thinking like...
It is interesting to think about, again, like using that kind of language and that example, like these really historic works of art from these classic artists. You can't help but think about how that work was obtained. Like, how were they able to get it?
Yeah.
Whatever institution it is. I always think about that, even at a pristine, iconic, famous museum that houses all of the famous works that we all think about. I still think about how they got that art.
No, I would love to talk with someone. If anyone knows, people at the Detroit Institute, I think we should try to get someone for an interview, Gianna. And I would love to know more about the provenance of their collection. Not that, I'm not insinuating anything. Like, we joke a lot about how most of the art, in museums are stolen. I'm not trying to insinuate that.
No, it's just a true fascination for how do you obtain something so famous? Like, how does that come about in a legal, okay sense?
Right, and just, like I was talking about before, too, I think that the rest of white America has this perception about the city of Detroit, and I would just be curious, like, how the institution was built, and I was also talking with people about just the city in itself at the wedding, and it was just really cool to hear, from locals about how much they love their city and all that stuff. It was really cool.
Well, that's really fantastic. I'm glad you guys had a great time. I know that we dropped photos of your time there on our Instagram, but later on we'll have to drop those photos in a post for sure.
I can do a post this week on our Instagram for you all. I also visited the Heidelberg project, and maybe, Gianna, that's something we can save for a longer episode about public art. But I had learned about the Heidelberg project in my Art Since 1960 class in school, and it's this outdoor art environment in an urban area of Detroit that now serves as like a community organization with, I'm going to read a quote from the website with, quote, a mission to improve the lives of people in the neighborhoods through art. So it was built in 1988 by artist Tyree Guyton, and it is in a street, Heidelberg Street, and that's where the artist is from. And then he came back and then kind of used this street and its surrounding environments to make this kind of art project about it. So I'll put that on our Instagram as well too, and I will also link their website for you all on our resources page. So just want to highlight we got to see that as well.
I love that the past 2 episodes I feel like we've been on these kind of like art happening excursions. That's been really fun to highlight.
It's so nice. It feels so nice. I mean,
yeah, it does, which is crazy because in the beginning of all this, we really were not able to do it. So it's really nice for us. It feels like this beginning and this return. So I hope you all are enjoying that as much as we are.
Speaking of new beginnings, Gianna has an announcement. Not to put pressure on you, but are you ready to share?
Well, drum roll, please. So after talking about how I've been trying to get myself to Tulsa, I am happy to say that you won't have to listen to me drone on about that anymore, because I am indeed moving to Tulsa, actually in here in about a week. So I am very excited to be in that area, getting to work with a museum up there, and just getting more tied into the local arts community in Tulsa just as a practicing artist, because it really is a very tight-knit community up here. I would argue that Oklahoma City is as well, but
for sure,
you know, each community is so different, but they definitely have something really special happening. So I will be up there, and kind of
so Danlin fam.
So Danlin fam, I told you, girl, let me buy you that drink. I'm trying to force people to be friends with me and force their love onto them. So anyways, yes. So in light of this adjustment that I am making, Bianca and I are going to actually take the month of July off for recording. But during that month, we are going to be highlighting some of our old episodes that we think, in light of some new conversation that we had, is really good to kind of just go back to and is a good refresher. This is also in light of us having quite a few new followers and listeners, some little new Artpop Tarts, but then wanting to catch up on a lot of content. So this is a really good time for that to happen, but we'll still be very active on social media as well, and still sharing with things week to week. And there'll also be a newsletter for July as well.
Yes, so if you are a new Artpop Tart, we have a monthly newsletter. You can go to artpoptalk.com, sign up for our newsletter. We send it out at the beginning of every single month. We tell you what we're watching, what we're going to be talking about in the upcoming month, what other pop culture references or books or podcasts you might want to tune into to kind of pair along with our upcoming conversation. So for the month of July, we're still going to do that. We're still going to tell you what we're watching. I know season 2 or part 2 of Lupin just came out, so I'm very excited about that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I know. So we will also in that newsletter, again, highlight for you some episodes that you might want to revisit, or if you're new, some things that we think are iconic to, you know, the APT brand overall. And with that, just a reminder, you can follow us on Instagram. Like Gianna said, we'll still be posting throughout the month of July. That's at Artpop Talk. We're on Facebook. There's a Facebook group, Artpop Tarts, that you can join. We're on Twitter at Artpop_Talk, because a Lady Gaga fan account has the Artpop Talk handle still, and I cannot get a hold of it. And we're also on YouTube, so you can also go over to our YouTube channel and subscribe there. If you want, during the month of July, you can also go back and watch some of our episodes, particularly the ones that we've done with guests. We initially started doing all of our interviews in video format as well, so you can go over there and watch those. We also have a lot behind the scenes that we're working on over the month of July while Gianna is moving and in flux. APT is working on a lot of really exciting upcoming collaborations. So just bear with us over the month of July. And then when we come back in August, I can't wait to talk to you guys about everything that we have in the works. And it's going to be really cool. I'm just really excited.
Yeah. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Speaking of good things, I think it is about that time to dig into Josh thoughts. If this is your first time meeting Josh, you will absolutely adore him just as much as we do.
All right, everyone, enjoy this episode of Josh Thoughts.
Artpop Talk, Artpop Talk, Artpop Talk, Artpop Talk.
All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to Artpop Talk. We are here for another episode of Josh Thoughts.
All right.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's just the two of us this time. Wow,
In
our
a dark,
trio.
weird room.
We're in a dark, weird room. We're in the music room. I'm not gonna lie, I did take a little photo of like the setup with a guitar background.
Nice.
So
I'm even missing one of my basses on the wall. It's gonna be incomplete.
no. Okay, well now we're just gonna have to restage it over. And you know,
Yeah.
this time it'll be good to have you in the photo. I suppose.
All right, yeah.
Good empty chair. But I'm kind of missing the trio today because we are talking about the triptych
Oh
of it
yeah,
all.
it's true.
So that feels like a really missed opportunity to me, but I'm gonna do my best.
All right.
So everyone, this episode of Josh Thoughts, as Bianca and I talked about earlier, will be about a lot of Dischordia today. So Dischordia, Josh's band in which he's the lead screamer for, and the bassist.
Bassist, yeah.
Bassist. They're coming out with a new album called Triptych, and they all have commissioned me to do the cover art for their album, which is so exciting. And we love a good APT Dischordia collaboration, so it was the perfect opportunity to talk about it today. So first of all, we have talked about some of the albums, I think a little bit, or just some of the musicality that comes with Dischordia, but what number album is this for you guys?
This is our third full-length album. We've also had 3 EPs. We kind of always go back and forth on, we think probably a couple of those don't really count. We don't really consider them Dischordia canon anymore, but
Not in the discography.
yeah, I mean, they're all out there in some form or another, but yeah, it's album number 3. We're very excited. And yeah, we had our last, the thing we've liked the best so far is our previous EP, and I think our writing evolved quite a bit with that one, and it continues nicely into this new one, and now it's a full length.
Yeah, that's exciting. I feel like when you all were touring, and also before COVID, you guys were always playing at bars locally, and I wasn't 21 yet, so I wasn't able to ever see you guys. So I'm very invested in this album.
Yeah.
Yes, because of my involvement, but I'm really trying to get like an APT mosh pit going. That would be the best way to, I think, celebrate the pandemic being over once we come to that point, is to be in a gross, dirty mosh pit.
We do have a show in August booked.
You do?
In Oklahoma City, yeah.
That's exciting. At what venue?
89th Street Collective.
Okay.
August 14th, I think, is the date. And we'll be pushing that hard as it gets closer. So, yeah, it's...
Josh, you know
it's
what
finally
this
there.
means. This is a great opportunity for an APT meetup.
Absolutely. And the venue is actually pretty nice. Like, it used to be notorious for being filthy and disgusting. And then it came under some new ownership a few years ago, and they've spent a long time fixing it up, and it's actually pretty nice now. So,
yay.
like, the big thing about this venue used to be, like, the joke was, you didn't go in the bathrooms, did you? Like, that kind of vibe.
Right.
And even bands that we played with, you know, in all the surrounding states, they would remember, you know, we'd say, yeah, we played this place locally, and they said, I don't know what that show or what venue that is. I might have played a show there, and then I mentioned the bathrooms, and like, I know what venue that is. Yeah. So they used to be bad, and now they're good. So, and I guess they took like the whole shutdown to like fix it up and do it right. And so if there's a meetup there, it won't be disgusting. We will sound disgusting, but the surroundings will be fine.
Okay, good. That seems like a good vibe for what we're looking for.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes, like, I was able to go back to like a local towny bar in Stillwater, and they had fixed up the bathrooms, and they were promising to fix them up for years. But part of me was like sad. Like, the bathrooms weren't the same.
Yeah.
It was like an experience. I don't know, which
Yeah.
sounds uncomfortable, but so are towny bars.
It's weird, but yeah. There's a weird character. There's some history there, I guess. I don't know.
There is.
History of weird bodily fluids and gross things, but
And I mean, the history of bathrooms are gross, but great plug for our bathrooms episode that Bianca and I did about Kohler. So everything is connected.
yeah. And the way those bathrooms used to be was probably in someone's eyes also a work of art. So you know.
I feel like a little bit of preface for this episode too. When I was writing out my thoughts for the show, I felt very much like everything has a meaning, everything is connected, as I'm like making my own assumptions about your album to mine art. And I feel like if there are any new girl stans listening, that's a very like Nick Miller quote, but that's my basic white girl moment that I'll provide for the segment. But let's get back to the album. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of it, I did want to ask, it seems like you guys are really excited about this album, and I was just curious if anything really stood out differently from some of the other albums or the EPs thematically or conceptually, or do you feel like it's followed a nice trajectory for you guys?
Well, yeah, like I was saying, our the thing we like the most is the last EP we did, and the last EP was 2 songs. Both songs were over 11 minutes. So it was a very kind of thought heavy, top to bottom, thematically scripted, kind of like the most unified thing we've ever done, and we like that a lot. So we wanted to have that same idea of let's start with an idea, and then, or even if we don't start with an idea and write to that idea, we find a way to link everything to, either an idea or like things that can be grouped together, and like that. None of that may not come across the music at all for people just kind of listening to it, but for us writing it, it felt a lot more cohesive than any other full length we've had. Our first full length was kind of rushed and not really what we wanted it to be, which is why we don't even think about it anymore, honestly. And then our second full length, I think we had it was like half and half. Like it was half of that like really unified, we're all on the same page idea, and then half was still fine, just maybe a little less cohesive. And to us, looking back on it, feels maybe not as I don't know, memorable. But then this album finally, I think we have an idea of like every song is exactly what we wanted it to be. The links that we have in our minds, like I said, might not come across to the listener, but it feels the most cohesive. So that's kind of the big difference about it. And when I think about this album, that it's it feels better top to bottom as like a unified product, which is really nice.
Yeah. It's funny just because I know you, and even just when I think about some really stupid or like trivial concepts like your social media posts, Josh is a really great storyteller. Like, you really are, and even in a really funny, short, humorous ways, but he has some really good like social media segments, especially going on tour with Dischordia. Just writing out scripts for how this chaotic road trip went for you guys. And I feel like even using that as an example, just because I can see how like your brain works and the musicality of it all involved in that, I'm really here for it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, those some of my best posts have been horribly awful events, like our van breaking down and almost not making a show, or a pipe bursting in our house and ruining half of it. And
including us all in on it.
Yes. That's my coping mechanism, and it could be worse.
I know, but I'm really here for it. But even with that too, I'm going to strongly encourage everybody to follow Dischordia on Instagram if you have not. But they just have really such a good vibe. Like, I loved one of the latest videos of, I think, Kino screaming or doing some kind of, vocal
stuff in the studio, yeah.
And then turning to the camera, I think his son was maybe there, and he was just like, "Hey, bud." Such good dad vibes.
Yeah.
I'm really here for it.
Yeah, we are like probably the best dad metal band out there.
I think so.
And it's a new genre that we pioneered, dad metal.
And just to give us, I think, a little taste of what we could expect for, little APT exclusive content, didn't you tell me earlier there's kind of a funny Easter egg, as I like to call them, of a dream that Kino, one of your bandmates, had and is now worked into the album?
Oh yeah, the whole third, and we'll talk in a bit about like the little suites inside the album, SUITES. There's nothing sweet about the sound of the album. It sounds awful.
It's not cute.
But no. But so the whole third like kind of segment of the album is about Kino's dreams, and we'll get more on that later. But I will I'll spoil it right now. I'll spoil one little bit of it right now, where one song is about where he turned into a cucumber in his dream. And in his dream, he was, I think, in the ground. And I don't know if do cucumbers grow? I don't know how cucumbers grow, now that I'm thinking about it.
I think they're on like a little plant bush thing, because it's a squash. So think of like how a pumpkin is. Yeah. It's not like a bush, but
so it's not a root.
It's not a root. It's not like a carrot.
So his dream was wrong to begin with, because he's in the ground. And I think he got pulled up and he was worried about getting grilled. And all the other cucumbers were telling him, like, no, man, you don't, like, cucumbers don't get grilled. Like, that's not a thing that people do. And he was like, yes, they do. We're gonna all get grilled, guys. And they were like, no. And so he somehow escaped and rolled down a hill and got stuck in a ditch as a cucumber because he can't move. He's a cucumber. I don't know how he escaped, though. But, and then I think in the dream he just sort of, like, was stuck in the ditch. Like, he freed himself, but, like, then he was stuck and, like I think rotted in the sun.
This is just my, like, childhood trauma association, but the Veggie Tales of it all, and with, like, the Triptych reference is making me feel like this is really just a Veggie Tales gone bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
A Veggie Tale complex happening. But I'm kind of here for it. So with that little spoiler, this convo will be exciting for all the Dischordia stands listening, because I know the underground world of death metal also happens to coincide with a large portion of our listeners.
Absolutely.
But Josh is going to break down the concepts of the album, because there is a lot of plot, I feel like, here at play. And again, that idea of a narrative and a story being told. And I do want to talk about that, and then after that, kind of go into the cover art and the art of it all, because I think it'll be important to break down that idea of the triptych before we do go into the visuals. So Josh, if you'd be so kind to take us through the 3 sections of the album. They are titled Observer, and then the Chariot, and then the Escape. So do we want to start with the Observer?
Yeah. So the album is 9 tracks long, and it's called Triptych. And the it's basically these 3 different 3-song suites. And, you know, earlier I mentioned how kind of having a story or like sort of a unifying idea like really helped us. Like we found that we liked that a lot in the writing process. So we just set out with like, all right, we're gonna have something cohesive and you know, a unifying theme. The 3 suites aren't really related, but just like kind of being able to sort of compartmentalize as we wrote was very helpful, and that's just what we like to do. So the first suite is the Observer suite, and the idea with that one is we were talking to a friend of ours who's ridiculously smart. He has like 18 degrees from MIT, and only 2 actually, not 18. What a jump!
Feels like 18.
Yeah, right. And we're just kind of talking with him about some, you know, just interesting scientific stuff, and he was talking about, you know, the way we view reality and the way we kind of interact with, you know, or like, you know, how we possibly can function within reality and what our reality is versus what a, you know, quote unquote objective reality is, and how there can't be like a very like a truly what's the word, objective observer, because, you know, obviously our scope of what we see on the planet and what we can see in space and how far we can, like, you know, study things away from us, or even just how light gets to us, we just have no real way of seeing the quote unquote truly bigger picture. But, you know, the way that humans are, it seems like we, you know, we think we're the big picture, and you know, we have all these ideas and like attach ourselves to, you know, whatever it may be that we think is the most important thing ever. But if you were to kind of put yourself, not that we actually can, but kind of view things from that hypothetical observer's viewpoint, then, I mean, you know, we're just like the tiniest little speck on the tiniest little speck imaginable.
Yeah.
So that, you know, kind of rambled on with that a little bit, but the first suite really deals with, you know, if it's written from the perspective of the observer and the hypothetical observer, who can, you know, see galaxies being torn apart over billions of years, and then you know, looking at us and being like, oh, they're mad because, you know, their Xboxes won't turn on or something like that. Like, you know, we
are just marbles being played with by aliens.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And not that we talk about like Xboxes in the songs or anything like that, but so that's the idea of the first 3 suites. You know, our physical limitations, are just limitations of knowledge, like how we can't even possibly know what we don't know. That, you know, stuff like that is kind of what we're going after with the first 3 songs. And those ones are, if I remember the names, oh no,
You sent me
Minds of Dust, Bodies of Ash, and Spirits of Dirt. I struggle with that because we have all 9 songs were working titles for a long time. Stuff like Fudge and Coffee and Coffee Whiskey and Tactical Whiskey. And I don't remember why any of those were named any of that, but the working titles are stuck in my head very firmly. So I got those. But even those we mix up sometimes too, so we're hopeless.
Do you have a favorite in that first suite?
I'm gonna go with the first song. Okay, I do remember why this one had the working title for the first song was Happy.
Oh.
And it was given that working title because I wrote most of that one, and it sounds like the angriest thing I've ever written, probably. So I as a joke gave it the working title Happy. So it kicks the album off with like just a kick to the teeth, in my opinion. I like how it turned out, and we all contributed parts to it and made it sound just, pretty aggressive and nasty and all that. But that one is like, wait, hold on. Minds of Dust. Yes, Minds of Dust is the actual name, and I think it's probably my favorite out of the first 3.
With that in mind, kind of talking about the components that each of you guys bring to the table, I wanted to kind of pinpoint on the fact that you guys identify as a progressive death metal band, and I was wondering if you could really quickly, before we move on to that next suite, about what kind of sets you apart from just death metal in that broad scope.
Yeah. So in our mind, like there's a lot of genre tags out there that sort of have a and I apologize everyone if you can hear my son screaming in the background. But
it's all part of the aesthetic.
Exactly. So the genre tags like progressive or technical or things like that, they get used to describe music, and then they kind of like almost take on a whole thing of their own, where like, there's a whole genre of prog, which, because that grew out of a lot of bands being progressive. So I don't think we're exactly like a prog metal band, and we're not at all that. I think we just like the word progressive because it's a word that kind of means, we're gonna mix things up. Like we don't even do this on purpose, really. We just end up changing time signatures a lot in our music, and we don't really think about time. When I write stuff, I don't even really think about time signatures. Like I know everything after it's written out, or after I get the ideas out, but I don't think about like, okay, let's, I'm going to be in 4/4 here, and how's it going? Like I'll start with some kind of thing, and it ends up, it just happens to be in 7/4 or something like that, and then the next bar is in 6/8 or whatever. So we kind of like that's the thing that we think about as being our progressive element. Like we try to mix things up a lot, not just in time signatures, but like really trying to be as creative as we can with like the notes we use, and not being predictable, not being not like overly repeating stuff a ton, and trying to be inventive in our song structure. It's not just like verse chorus and we're done. It's a lot of different weird sections. So to us, we just sort of casually call that progressive. A bunch of metal nerds will argue to their death about what it actually means, but whatever.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I just thought that was good to talk about. I know that we have talked about in our last episode of Josh Thoughts, when we talked about lingua ignota.
Oh yeah.
And there is a stigma around death metal, and I think we can all agree that it is very performative and it is very fluid, but there is so much, just like with any genre, that does go into it. And I think just, again, like knowing you, and also just your full scope of your musical background and your talent, like you're a very well-rounded musician.
Well,
I would say.
Yeah.
Coming from your failed student, which I do apologize for, I do feel that slight need for your approval. So, haha.
Can't believe you didn't practice your bell kit more. It's so much fun.
But I found something else, so yes. It all worked out. But let's go into the chariot of it all. I think that's a really good. I know you said that triptych, that word works really well with the 3, and each section means something different. But I'll get into the visuals of it. But I think the chariot, that concept, works very nicely as something very tangible between the observer and the escape.
Yeah. I think I want to say the chariot suite was the first one that was like we recognized as, hey, this is an idea for a suite. Let's do this, and then later on we kind of solidified the outside suites. And so the idea with the Chariot is that there's the 3 songs there are called the Wheel, the Whip, and the Carriage. And the whole Chariot is basically a metaphor for our wonderful unique American brand, or like global really brand of was essentially late stage capitalism, where the idea is that the 99%, the everyday people, the normal people, working class, and like however else you want to whatever categories you want to put into that, are chained to the wheels of this enormous carriage, and they're just going somewhere. The destination is kind of unknown, like it's just progressing forward. This is this vehicle moving forward, and these people are all chained to the wheel. It's lightning, storming, thunder, dirt, mud, terrible things, and all the people on the wheel are like, this is the only way we can go anywhere. It's like we have to be on this wheel, we have to move. And then other people on the wheel are saying, no, the carriage is huge, we can all fit in the carriage if we go up there. And then like there's parts of the song where if the people in the downward turn are like, we got to get into the carriage, the people in the upward turn are like, no, shut up, it's my turn, I'm gonna get to the door this time. And then of course they just go to the top and start going back down again. It's just a big cycle. Right. And that's the wheel. And then in the whip, the like the whip being the sort of thing that's driving the carriage forward, that's moving the horses along, of course. And this one kind of the theme was sort of inspired by a band I like called Piron. They have a song called "The Invisible Hand Holds a Whip," right? Like the idea of like, people love to just sorry. Hear my son having a bad time in the background. I know. We can cut that out. But the song called "The Invisible Hand Holds the Whip" or holds a whip. Like this idea of the everyone, not everyone, but people of a certain mindset, like the invisible hand of the free market sorts everything out, and just like infuriating stuff like that. Yeah. That's like, no, it does not. And so I like that idea of the visible hand holds a whip. So that's what's kind of essentially that song is sort of inspired by that title, and just kind of elaborates on that idea of like this whip is driving everything forward, but who's holding the whip? Like, what's the driver of the carriage? Like, who is that? Like, who's driving this whole thing forward? Why is it? Where are we going? Like, what's the idea of like why we're all chained to this wheel in the mud? And like, so that's the idea with the second song. And then the third song, the carriage, that is the the wealthy elite who are inside the carriage and all like the comfort, and like there's just unimaginable amounts of room in it, in our hypothetical carriage. And it's nice and dark and comfortable, and you can't really hear the screams and the whip from outside because it's all nice and everything inside. And they're discussing amongst themselves like, of course there's not enough room for everyone else up here. They have like it's nice for us that we let them all ride on the wheel and we can all move forward this way. This is the only way we can do it. And so obviously that's that's maybe it's a bit clumsy, but that's a metaphor for our lovely capitalist system. And
love it.
Yeah,
I'm actually very here for it. Just because this had just come out, there was an article that I saw CBS, of course, report on, but it's pretty big news. I think it was like Republico magazine was able to get some info about basically our celebrity billionaires' tax returns. Including our friend Jeff Bezos and Warren Buffett, but also Warren Buffett has been pretty transparent about the fact that he has not paid an exuberant amount of taxes. And if Theben was here, he is Warren Buffett's biggest fan, so I'm sure he would love to talk about that a little bit. But obviously that is not new conversation, and not a ton of it is new news. It's just interesting that we do have the numbers now about how these millionaires have literally paid like zero taxes.
And nothing will change. Everyone will be like, oh, look at that outrage, and then then nothing happens. And
it is, I mean, just when you do have the numbers in front of you, it is really interesting to think that I could have hypothetically paid more taxes this year than a billionaire because of going through loopholes, and donations and investment banking is quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I think I think what I like about it too, and I mean, we are talking about capitalism in an American context, but also how in so many ways, like, you know, everything is so Western centric and American centric, and like we're supposed to set this stupid example for everyone, and we don't live up to our expectation, and then like shit like this keeps happening. So that's also like that other aspect of like capitalism and the idea of like free will and like democracy that will just, you know, I will constantly find fascinating, but also really upsets me. But again, if Theban was here, he could talk your ear off about how no one has free will.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and, well, I was about to get launched onto a whole thing about capitalism being, of course, permanently linked with imperialism and,
Sure.
and you know, that, and then how that's affected countries across the world that, you know, probably a whole separate discussion on that. But, yeah, so that second suite is our, you know, nice little anti-capitalist and,
You love to see
leftist death metal stuff.
That's the brand. That is the brand.
Yeah, it is.
So the escape, what is that about? Are we getting taken to a better place or a worse
Oh
place?
no, of course not.
Okay.
Well, the whole escape thing was, like I mentioned earlier, is Kino's dreams, and he was on if I'm not mistaken, I think he was on a medication for a bit for something or other that just gave him really weird dreams.
It's interesting.
And so he, so the first one that he had that he wrote the song was the one that was about him being a cucumber. And by the way, we had an entire tour on that song, and we didn't have a name for it. And we were like, what should we name this song? And every time we played it live, we would say, thanks everyone. This song is new. It's about cucumbers, and then we just launch into it, and it was kind of funny. But
I think you should really call it like VeggieTale something, or like VeggieTale Trauma.
yeah,
Because I think that would be iconic.
Yeah. And then he had another, and that's sort of like the, you know, the goofy moment of the album. It doesn't sound goofy, and the lyrics don't reflect that at all, because it's, you know, using coded creative language talking about the whole thing. So it's, you know, we it's a serious song, but that's the second one on there. The first song on there is about another dream he had, and it kind of got space oriented with that one too. Like I think the sun was the eye of Sauron, and he was hiding behind, or maybe it was God's eye, and he was hiding behind the moon, and Kino was in space hiding behind a moon or something like that. I'd have to. Sorry, Kino, I'm butchering your dream. And then he watched the world get blown up and then float off into space.
Oh, great.
So yeah, there's that. So he had some weird dreams, and we and then the third song is kind of an interesting story. I don't think it was like a personal dream of his, but it was he was exploring ideas of sleep paralysis, where you know, he's kind of taking that world of sleep paralysis into being like kind of an in-between world sort of thing, where, you know, the kind of the protagonist, if you will, in the song is exploring that world, and, you know, trapped there, and meets a sort of like figure within that Kino named Somnus, and then like sort of like a power struggle between the protagonist and Somnus. And then I can't remember who wins the power struggle. Dang it. Again, Kino, I'm sorry. But
leave us wanting more.
Yeah, there it is. That's what I'm doing here. So somehow or other, I think one of the characters is like left like man, I did the vocals for this, and I screamed these words, and I don't remember exactly what was happening.
Well, I mean, and this could just be bullshitting with my over analytical like art historical brain, so feel free to call me out on this, like that's totally fine. But I think everything speaks to this like constant struggle. You know, you have the constant idea of surveillance, the constant presence of nature and how overwhelming that is, the constant persistence of our system and capitalism, and just ending with that constant struggle. So, you know, it in a way, again, that could be just, again,
I like that.
My brain, but it seems like nothing really has that ending. It's just this constant.
Yeah. And I do know that the ending of that song isn't like really hopeful or anything
Sure.
like that. It's kind of I know the last few words are talking about how like the freedom of death that you could potentially have, you know, if like for the escape, if you will, is sort of denied by you know, like various things. But the so the idea of the title of that last suite being the escape is that you know, dreams and sleep is somewhat as something of an escape from whether it's just everyday life or, you know, or however else you want to define that. But of course, going into that escape, like we see there's lots of problems, right? You're a cucumber who rolled down a hill and you're stuck rotting in the sun.
Right.
Or you're hiding behind the moon and you just watch the planet get blown up.
And a little bit of a path of no return.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever option or whatever escape you choose to have. Yeah.
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 So it's so that was the idea with that third one, and I think those songs are called, let me remember, Panopticon. Talking about the observing thing that you were talking about.
Yeah.
That kind of, I guess that sort of does link back to the Observer Suite a little bit. And then Purifying Flame is the cucumber one. And then La Petite Mort, or probably Mort, because it's French and you wouldn't say the last T. Like the little death is like what sleep is interpreted as sometimes.
Cool. Cool. Well, before we get into the visuals of it all, is there anything else we should know about the musicality of the Triptych album?
Sounds gross.
Sounds gross.
Yeah. Oh, I should also say that, you know, the progressive tag that we kind of talked about earlier, we also like to really lean into dissonance quite a bit, like notes that really clash and just sort of like intentionally make things sound very jarring and very well, just dissonant. And a lot of our favorite bands do that really well, and we just try to copy them the least bad we can.
Okay, everyone, we are going to take a little break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the album cover for Triptych. Okay, everyone, welcome back. We're still with Josh, getting more thoughts. Don't worry, I do have some fun pop culture questions
I can't wait.
Ask at the end.
I'm going to know everything about all of them.
I bet you will. Super pumped. But let's talk about the visuals of the album. So when we were first discussing Triptych coming out and the possibility of me doing the cover art, you were really excited about the idea of doing kind of a classic oil painting, or just an oil painting of sorts. And now that we have discussed the concepts of the album, I think your original intention of doing an oil painting actually makes a lot of sense based off some of the imagery you were showing me in the concepts. And I think with my brain, art historically speaking. But before I kind of go into my reasonings why I think that's interesting, I'm curious just what your thought process was behind the art concept and wanting to do something like that was rooted in a kind of classic painting.
Yeah, so our I think some of my favorite metal album covers, and you know, we can do a whole episode on that sometime, just, you know, not just our art, but like trends and styles and things in metal art in general. And some of my favorite ones tend to be painting oriented ones. And I think it just kind of conveys a mood really, really well when with, like, you know, whether it's like foreboding landscapes or just like kind of a weird, just like, or architectural things, or even like, you know, like sort of a focus on a sort of person or central object. I think a lot of paintings I've seen, you can just kind of tailor it perfectly to just like almost know, especially metal bands, like know almost exactly what the band's going to sound like just looking at the album. And so I like that idea. I like the idea of having a you know, and maybe not everyone, maybe a non-metal listener wouldn't really have those distinctions just off the visuals, but I like the idea of that idea. Like you can like really, you know, not like just not judge a book by its cover, obviously, but really have a good idea of like our sound and that through the a cover. And I think paintings in metal anyway, like tends to convey that really well.
Yeah. No, that is interesting. I mean, it just, visuals do set a tone for something, and it kind of even goes back to that phrase, you know, don't judge a book by its cover, but a cover of a book is going to hopefully set the same tone as it would for what you're reading. Otherwise, like, I picked up this pretty pink book. I thought it was going to be so nice, but it ended up being like about ghost stories and shit, like, you know. So there are associations that we make with visuals, and yeah, of course it's important. You had shared with me some references of other art and art styles that you guys were interested in, and it was all based in kind of what you were describing, very constructed. I hesitate using the word like steampunk, but just very kind of dark fantasy landscapes. One of the artists you referenced was Mariusz Lewandowski, who is a Polish artist, if I'm not mistaken. We had to look up the pronunciation of that name earlier.
And I'm sure we were still wrong.
Do apologize. And that artist really ended up inspiring, I think, the figurative elements for me and the symbolism, especially in the escape visual narrative. He has a lot of really great, like, creepy bodies, some of them kind of coming out of like a mirror or like a picture frame. So at the, I guess, far right end of the painting, I kind of have this almost like cave like staircase thing happening with very kind of creepy hands above it. But with everything that you guys were kind of wanting, going something into an oil painting, that was kind of the original idea. And then Josh has a lot of like really great graphic like metal shirts that, you know, I'm always looking at because I think they are really cool. And he has this jacket with, do you know, was that from a band or is it?
Yeah, Piron, same band I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Really cool graphics and honestly have some really beautiful, like, bold color in it. But when I was doing the sketching for the cover art, it was very, like, mixed media, just watercolor, ink, graphic. And we felt like it set this really kind of cool, different graphic tone. So then when we went into the final draft of things, it ended up being more of a watercolor mixed media than it did a kind of traditional oil landscape, but very rooted in those same themes. So I hope you guys still like it.
Oh, yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah. No, it came out great. It came out, you know, like because the whole scope of it's really hard to capture in just one image, right? Like the three suites and you know, and like their categories within the painting. I think it worked out great, and you did an awesome job. And I think the progression left to right is really great, and that you know, I don't know if you did this on purpose, but we sort of decided later that those hands in the like that creepy kind of gateway sort of thing on the right, we were like, yeah, those are Somnus's hands, like in that character in the third song, and that kind of worked out nicely, and then like the sort of eye visual for the observer, and I think you took that cue from that Piron artwork really nicely, just like very visceral, and you know, the colors in that, you know, being a nice stark contrast from the other side where it's the gateway, and like in more of like a, you know, more of a moody atmosphere on that atmospheric vibe on that side, but then like the eye is very visceral and very I was feeling a little bit of like a psychedelic vibe a little bit, which is kind of what I got from the Piron graphics. But yeah, I think the hands and the escape, I thought, you know, they just look good visually, but
you have all these kind of other humanistic elements. You have the eye, and then you have the kind of creepy, like, cloaked figure that you've got to throw in there. That was in the carriage, so it felt very natural to also have another kind of human-esque or recognizable figurative element in each 3 sections. I think that tied in nicely. Kind of with everything we're talking about with oil paintings and the landscape, and especially with this idea of, I think, surveillance too, but this overwhelming, all-powerful, uncontrollable being that is nature is the source of our traditional landscape paintings from an art history perspective. We're talking before pictorialism with so much manipulation and the development of technology and documenting landscapes, even before American landscapes and that whole manifest destiny shit. And before Renaissance Impressionism, you know, we have this uncontrollable, masterful, and spiritual associations that are made with the land, and they can really be traced back to 6th century Chinese or Eastern landscape paintings, primarily done with brush and ink. And the style is also carried on in practice today. But I found this quote from an Artspur magazine about the style of this painting. Quote, "Shanxi painting is not an open window for the viewer's eye. It is an object for the viewer's mind. Additionally, aspects of the landscape painting, such as the color or subject likeness, are insignificant. However, the spiritual requirements of a work to be considered Shanxi are extensive. However, they are primarily based around 3 essential elements: the path, the threshold, and the heart. Firstly, the Shanxi path can never be straight. Our paths seen in nature, such as rivers or that of the sun across the sky. Furthermore, the path must lead to a threshold which welcomes you, for example, a mountain. Finally, the heart, which is the focal point of the painting that the other elements must lead to." And for me, this was kind of just a fun little art history nugget that I was keeping in the back of my brain as I was doing a little bit of personal refreshment on landscapes, because so much about that, there was just so much to play with when it comes to narrative. And I think as much as maybe Bianca and I like to shit on or hate on landscapes, just because visually it's not necessarily my favorite work of art to consume, but the history of it is fascinating. And I think even in something like taking the landscape and that narrative to the forefront in something performative like music or something graphic like this, I think we are really able to accomplish something pretty interesting. And I think there are so many layers obviously within each song and each suite. But my hope was that those layers were also going to come through a little bit, but they're just also fun for me to talk about on the pod as well.
Yeah, and that's all super interesting. And I don't know, I don't have the art historical background and the layers of complexity in thinking and approaching and you know, seeing symbolism in landscapes, or not even symbolism, just, you know, what that kind of viewing approach that you just described in that quote. But I mean, I think there's a lot of that to be seen in your work for us, and seeing, and you know, like kind of going back to those Marius Lewandowski paintings, where it is very landscape based, but very fantastical and very like, you know, it's not your earth, you know, it's not your, you know, real landscape. It's this very
you know, it's like something fictitious, it's something that was formulated. And something like that, I'm always going to make a classic association to a Da Vinci painting. When if you even look at the background of the Mona Lisa, it's very dark and creepy and fantastical. And it is sometimes described in art historical writings as like a Mars-like landscape, something not of this earth.
Yeah.
And so those things exist in very highly classic examples of in that case portraiture, but just painting. But I just found it so interesting. I think it goes to show that land is going to have this continual association over time, and even with development and conquering of the land, you still created this narrative without having an art historical background and association to this time period or this idea of Taoism or Eastern philosophy. And yet, I just, again, that's me. I'm going to have my Nick Miller moment. Everything is connected.
Yeah,
Everything is
yeah.
together. Everything has meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, we totally did it on purpose, and we were thinking about that the entire time, for
course.
sure. But no, well, one thing that was kind of intentional about the thread through that, and I don't know exactly how much this links to this discussion as specifically, but the idea of, like, the observer is this big, huge scope outside of our comprehension, and then the second suite zooms into, like a very real, even though it's a metaphor, the whole second suite's a metaphor, but a very real kind of like physical, like this is the daily grind of our lives, kind of, rooted in very realism kind of thing. Then zooming in even farther to like a single person's brain asleep, and then like even like you zoomed into that tiny little point, like it explodes into this whole other side of of that being an entirely new open world, which kind of linked back to the first suite with like the eye of Sauron being the sun or whatever in his dream, or whatever the interpretation he had throughout that. So yeah.
The last thing I kind of wanted to really pinpoint on was titling this album Triptych and having all the themes based in that concept, because when we use that word, we are by association making connections to Christianity. However, that style of visual narrative is just kind of like it's tied to the landscape. It has that progression of conscious and unconscious efforts of what has come before. When I think of a Renaissance landscape, there is a lack of depth or correct perspective. But what is being formed is this new kind of visual narrative. And I'll take one of my favorite paintings, a very classic example of, again, Birth of Venus. We have the main subject in the middle flanked by two competing moments in time, or two narratives. And that in itself has a very triptych-like or esque style. But as we can see, it does have this triptych-like style, and it did associate at that time with something like mythology or polytheism. Going back to that quote from Artspur magazine, Shanxi painting is not an open window for the viewer's eye, it is an object for the viewer's mind. This philosophical and spiritual way of documenting and understanding the earth or the land through something like Taoism is a basis for storytelling, as is so many other different forms of religion. But again, that's just kind of me making those different associations, and I can't help but not to with something like such a loaded word like triptych.
Yeah, and we thought about precisely none of that when we named the album Triptych, and I love the stuff that you can put onto it later on, and because I think, like you said earlier, we're quoting earlier, everything's connected, so you can make these connections with everything, and it was I love hearing all that and kind of seeing what we accidentally did kind of interestingly.
I know, and this is just kind of my own uncomfortable nature with people describing my own work back to me. I know, like, that can be a really kind of weird, uncomfortable experience for an artist. And I know, no pun intended, that is a little bit of our cross to bear. I mean, everybody is going to have their own different interpretation, based off what they bring to the table and how they can connect with it. So we know that there's always going to be that little aspect, but I know that I have felt that kind of unsettling nature when someone is kind of trying to explain their work back to you. It can be kind of weird.
Yeah, and like I said, it was an accident, but I like hearing all that stuff. That's awesome. and really for us, it was just that, the sort of the basic definition of a triptych is these three, basically sort of three panels that form one cohesive thing. For us, it was just we had these three suites that made one cohesive album, and the name just sort of happened to work like that. And I think I'd sort of accidentally stumbled on that name too, because I had remembered a band I like a lot called Krallis. They had released an album called Yig Her. That's my best attempt at the.
Where are they from?
They're from New York, and
Oh.
actually the guitar player in Krallis is the guy who does our mixing and mastering, Colin Marston. He's a genius.
Oh, dope.
But we're huge fanboys. But I also know that they kind of have fun with their, like, they're just an amazing band, and they do all kinds of just fascinating, amazing stuff. But they also kind of have fun with it. Like they've publicly said, like, oh yeah, we made that name up. Like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, it just, there's some words we threw together that sounded cool. So I think that might have been what they did here, because the album title Yig Her, like I said, YGG space HUUR. So whatever. Anyway, the cover for it is kind of interesting. It's like it's basically a zoomed in picture of, like, it looks like a cloak sort of thing. It looks like maybe a statue, but you can see that right there. Fascinating for the listeners.
Is it a drawing though?
So it is.
It looks very soft.
It's a picture of a painting, and the painting is a triptych. It's zoomed in, like, right there.
Oh.
And the painting is like it's these outer panels that you can pull away, and then there's an interior panel which makes up the third of the triptych. And it's if you can scroll up that a little bit, and there's the painter was Giovanna Celsi or Scelsi, something like that. I can't remember exactly who the painter was.
Yeah.
But
I'll definitely link it for our resource images.
yeah, and it's pretty cool. And I think that album came out in 2015, I want to say. So there wasn't, like, a fresh album right when we were writing this or anything. But I remember just kind of thinking back to that and learning that what the cover image was. And how, and not that the idea of a triptych really plays into their album, but I just thought it was kind of cool. And I think that kind of set our minds on this course of, like, a unifying thing. And it's sort of, even though our cover art is very, very different from that, the idea of, like, okay, let's go with this triptych idea, and we can unify the cover art this way, even if it's obviously very different from what that is. But that was
But it is so interesting, and I like, not that I'm super familiar with this painting, but it is titled The Exterior of Triptych, Archangel Gabriel and the Virgin Annunciate. But I do think it's interesting to take something that almost looks like a statue with this virgin's cloak. That is something,
I thought it was a statue when I first saw the album cover.
Yeah, like, we're very familiar with the way a kind of sculpted cloak looks, and it's going to have that art reference, and then zooming in on that, so not knowing exactly what it's associated with, but unlocking that visual memory in your head, I think, is super interesting.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to know how they, how they decided about, like, zooming in on that one specific part, because it's so nondescript, but it almost has, like, a full, like, when you see it by itself on the cover of this metal album, like, it's almost like a totally different
it is. It's a whole different composition and image. It stands on its own. That is interesting. Wow. See, this is why I love a Josh Thoughts Dischordia collab.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of art crossover
all
stuff.
All kinds of art. I think we should really think about having Kino or Josh too.
Great.
Come on in the future. But
and
we'll
they
see
will,
how
they will maybe know the words better than I do. The words that I am tasked with repeating loudly.
We shall see if how they feel about this episode, and see if I can entice them to bring them on. But I am very excited for everybody to experience the album when it does come out. We're definitely going to make sure that we put Josh's and Dischordia's show on our calendar and our newsletter. You said for August
14th, I think it
14th.
is.
Yeah, for sure. And I will share images of what the image looks like now. Josh and I are still going to work through some cropping for it and a little bit of digital manipulation, so that'll be really fun. So that'll all be coming through, but right now is the classic image for what it is will stay the same, so I will share those images with you all. But before we go, Josh, it's time for your pop culture quiz.
All right.
Some
I'm gonna nail it.
Some pretty iconic stuff has happened. So I'm just gonna take us through the big stuff. So I was getting a lot of FOMO from our last episode with Bianca and Alyssa because they discussed the Friends reunion, and I need your hot takes.
I learned about this maybe a day or two ago through some memes that were making fun of it.
Oh no! Were they chuggy memes? I reject that.
I don't. I remember the episode where we all talked about what that word means, but I don't know what that word means. And I don't think there's ever a way I will know and understand what that means.
I don't think so either, because you're definitely like a very on the other side of the spectrum from chuggy.
I hope that's true. Whatever that means, I hope it's true.
Okay, well, since you're not a part of the Chug crew, I guess we can move on. But also, Meghan Markle had her baby with Harry. So what do you think of the name?
What's the name?
Lilibet, Lily for short, and then Diana Mountbatten Windsor.
What the hell did you just say?
Okay, so Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. So
what is... I thought they were like trying to distance themselves with, and then with the royal family. Then it's like the most royal ass baby name I can imagine.
Well, it is for sure.
Name the kid like Jeff, and then be done, and then don't bug the world with it.
But I guess like my understanding is like the Lily part or the Lilibet is the association or the name reference to Queen Elizabeth. So the name is supposed to pay homage or have a sort of dedication to the Queen. We must
always pay homage to the Queen.
We must.
That is what
She's
we
our
have
queen, Josh. What else are we supposed to do?
Cut her head off?
Imperialism is horrible.
Guillotines?
But
that's what we're supposed to do with queens.
Oh, God. Hot takes on the bebe.
Guillotine. Queen.
I'll
work it out.
Royal bebe moment. Okay, so our best and most terrifying question of all. Fucking Jeff Bezos is going to the moon. Have you heard about this? I need your hot take on this.
I think I heard that he was going to space.
I am deeply disturbed.
Yeah, my first thought of like him like going to space was like, great, go launch yourself into the sun and die. And then just hearing your question now about going to the moon, I thought, great, go to the moon and die. Like pick wherever else you want to pick, where you can go the farthest away from everybody, and I hope a moon rock lands on you.
I literally have, after the story just came out with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and all these other billionaires escaping tax funds, Bloomberg, the gist. Oh, yeah. But I just am imagining Elon Musk on his terrifying spaceship flying him and Jeff Bezos to the moon, and then like finding just another place to like hide their money, like for attack. Like now we're gonna start like hiding money on Mars, and that'll be like a tax exempt like port thing.
It's a tax haven on Mars. Yeah. Well, they're probably gonna go to the moon and like somehow, while only they are on the moon, charge the working class for like moon occupancy.
Moon occupancy.
But we're like, or no, what they're gonna do is they're on the moon and they're gonna charge the working class for looking at the moon, because like this moon is ours, you can't just look at it.
We're on the wheel.
So
man.
we're on the wheel.
We're on the wheel.
And so there's gonna be a charge for looking at the moon. Like we're gonna have moon charges because they're gonna be up there like on their flipping moon yacht.
Hey, you want to look at the moon tonight? No, man, I used my moon charge last weekend.
I got my moon credits are out.
It was an eclipse, so I kind of...
And they're gonna somehow know through the vaccines, of course, that when we look at the moon.
Yes, because that's how they
and Bill Gates is gonna he's gonna know that we looked at the moon through our microchips.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that part was a joke, but I would not be surprised if they did some kind of chart, like the moon is ours, you can't look at it, we're gonna charge you, or we're like, look at it,
we all know how I feel about space, so I'll leave that at that.
Oh, space is cool as hell.
But this with my fear of billionaire white men is just really everything is colliding. I'm not feeling too hot about it.
Well, what if like these billionaire white men, they get launched into space and they miss the moon and they just keep going and they're gone forever? And they basically, like, space is like our trash can for billionaire white men. It's the new guillotine.
It's the new guillotine.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. You know, it's hard because when it comes to harm and violence, I like to consider myself a pacifist, but, you know, future's looking bright.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, there's not a lot of harm and violence in, like, okay, you get launched into space.
I think if they're willingly going into space and they're willing to take the risk. Like, I am not willing to go into space. Like, I will.
You don't have to.
I will die gladly.
You can stay here. Yeah.
And, like, I don't want to look at the freaking moon. Like, I'll just stay down here. I'll just look at the dirt and the ashes.
There we
reference
go. Yeah.
in Dischordia.
Yeah. So, yeah, but you can stay here while they just get launched into space and never come back.
Okay. Well.
But they still find someone to charge us for it.
As does Triptych end, so does this episode of Artpop Talk on this lovely note. But I think, honestly, that's some great content for some future metal art,
Absolutely.
if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, you know, we love a good Josh Thoughts, so, I mean, I think we've really just nailed it, I must say. Bianca doesn't know what she's missing.
No.
I hope she's getting as much FOMO in this episode as I did.
So she's going to ask her friends, like, they were talking about Krallis and Piron. What do you guys think? The same, yeah.
I agree, yeah. Yeah. Okay, guys.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Of course, as always, and we'll make sure to drop all future Dischordia mentions in our newsletter for any music happenings, art happenings. And with that, we will talk to you all next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Artpop Talk's executive producers are me, Bianca Martucci-Fink.
And me, Gianna Martucci-Fink.
Music and sounds are by Josh Turner, and photography is by Adrian Turner.
And our graphic designer is Sid Hammond.